Hey, you. Yes. Yes, you. The midlife woman who's not lost, but in the process of becoming. Me too. I see you. We are in the most powerful phase of our lives, even if we don't quite feel it yet. So I want to start with a story. A few years ago, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, staring at a reflection of a woman I didn't quite recognize. And this was during COVID, right? So much has happened in my life up to COVID, and then COVID hit. And did you feel that way during COVID where you were just like, what is happening? Could we really just die from a cough? And I didn't feel bad, but I also didn't feel good. I felt like I was just floating, I guess. Or I don't know. I don't even know if floating is the right word. I just didn't know where I was. And there was this nagging feeling inside, a real quiet whisper telling me that I was no longer the woman I used to be, but I hadn't yet figured out who I was becoming. And to tell you the truth, even though this language sounds simple, I felt really overwhelmed during that experience. And I remember when I was sitting on my bedroom floor, I just started crying. I cried, and the thing is, I wasn't even sure what I was crying about, but I just felt kind of sad. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've woken up one day and you've thought, what the, what's happening and what's next? And here's what I want you to know that I didn't know at the time is that being in midlife, and at the time, let's be honest, I didn't really know I was in midlife. It's not about being lost. It's about being in transition. And I didn't know that either. I didn't know I was in transition. It's about shedding the skin of who I was and embracing the power of who I was becoming. But again, I'll be completely honest with you, even though now I can put words to it, at the time I didn't have words for it. It just felt really overwhelming. So, the first thing that I really want to impart in this message is the messy middle. That middle where you're entering midlife, but you don't know you're in midlife, because that's me, right? And so many of the women I've talked to talk about the chrysalis of butterflies, right? This cocooning. And at the time, I didn't realize that that's where I was. I was in the midst of cocooning. And did you know that when butterflies are in their phase of cocooning, they actually become molten lava and they break all these bones inside because they're trying to, what's happening is that reconstructing for a stronger version of themselves. Because think about it. They start out as caterpillars, and what do caterpillars do? They don't fly. They are crawling around the ground. And what do butterflies do? Fly. Like, think about that craziness of being a ground dweller to a sky dweller. How does that even happen? So I think that's what's happening to us when we're in the messy middle of midlife. You know, when the new version that's still unfolding hasn't quite happened yet, and it's super uncomfortable. And for me, it wasn't so much discomfort, it was truly overwhelming. I felt sort of this really high level of anxiety because my physical body, my emotions, my mental space was moving, but it wasn't like I don't see it in front of me, right? I wasn't seeing all these changes. I spent so many years being my version, being in, and at the time, the language was all about being in survival mode, right? And again, we were in COVID, so naturally, it was a global panic. But the thing is, when I realized that the labels that I was, now it didn't happen immediately. I started seeing different types of coaching, different modalities for my emotional and mental health. I really started learning about how our bodies store trauma. I started really going into all of these spaces that I've never learned before. I read one of the books that I read that kind of shocked me was Dr. Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. That was the beginning of this stage, but I still didn't know it was midlife. So that was the space that was growth for me that I'd never experienced before. And that was magic. And the reason I say it's magic is because prior to that, any version of growth, I consciously was aware of. I knew that I was growing. I knew that this was a growth personal development thing. I knew that I didn't during this time. I had no clue. So then I start, this online business. And in this online business, now I'd been a business owner my entire adult life, right? My husband and I built a business for 25 years. And so I thought, oh, this is a natural transition into teaching people how to build businesses. But the thing that was that language that was coming up for me a lot during that time and the people I was talking to was this thing called imposter syndrome. And I think now that I realize, right, let's go back to the butterfly cocooning thing, is that at the time, what I knew of that, what society had been talking about when we get into the midlife is that it's time to settle in. It's time, we're done. We're done with our time. But in me, all of this fire and desire still was out there. I feel like I'm not ready to go to sleep yet. I still want to show up and do all the things and be all the things. But I also didn't want to sound boastful, be like, oh yeah, I'm this, I'm that. But I also didn't feel like I should be quiet. See where I'm going with this? It was like this state of confusion of not wanting to be this, but then knowing that that's where it's supposed to be headed. And I realized that what it was showing me is that shrinkage happens to us in this midlife space. That's what we're meant to be, is shrinking. We're not meant to shine. And hence the imposter syndrome. Because I feel like I have so much to give, but what I know is at this age, it's time to simmer down. So here I am, right? Thinking all of these things of self-doubt really starts oh my gosh. I know about you ladies, but I was really starting. And in that self-doubt, I started picking up habits of staying up all night, trying to calm my nerves down. I didn't realize it was my nerves. I just was all in my head. And then I started doing these snacking while, at night. And then next thing I know, I gained 20 pounds, which just compounds the emotional feeling of gosh, I am getting told. I don't know if this is a thing. I know. Isn't that crazy? So now I start having more imposter syndrome. And I remember I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast. I don't know anything about technology really well. I know things, but I don't know a lot of things when it comes to that. So then the imposter syndrome hit me even harder because honestly, who's going to listen to me? That's what I was saying. I really was thinking my gosh, there's 700,000 podcasts out there that are so much more fun than me. And here's the other thing that I was really struggling with. I'll be completely honest and vulnerable right now. I just didn't see successful online business owners or online or podcasters or YouTubers that look like me. I mean, I feel kind of ashamed to admit that because I feel like, gosh, if I was blonde, if I was bubbly, if I was all these things, my podcast would go off without a hitch. And so I really was having some serious self-doubt of I don't see anybody being extremely successful in that space that looks like me. That voice of doubt gets louder. But I am the kind that doesn't go down that easily. So I just sought more support. I started working in this positive intelligence space. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's phenomenal. You should go check it out. And I started working with a forgiveness coach, and that really, oh my gosh, really took that. So I learned a lot about my voice of fear, my voice of doubt in my positive intelligence work. But then I really got real with myself in my forgiveness work. So then I just made a decision to step in, right? And like, you know what? I am not ready to lay down and give up. What I'm going to do though is surrender to all of my negative emotions. Surrender to it and understand what it's trying to tell me, what it's about, why am I feeling this way? And then as I started to see things shift for me, I started celebrating small wins. But let's be real, because the confidence I had built prior to my midlife space can't be duplicated in the midlife space. It just doesn't work that way. So it was about taking these small, courageous steps. And one of the biggest tiny steps I took was listening to a very dear friend who owns a boutique publishing company. And I wrote a chapter. As a matter of fact, I headed a book that is an anthology book with 20 other women, and we all wrote a chapter. That small space really helped me to see that I can do hard things. I can do hard things at this age. I still want to do hard things. I mean, I'm not going to be, you know, out there doing the things that I did in my 20s or 30s and 40s. But just because I'm 50 doesn't mean that the hard things are gone, right? The little things that I need to be courageous for. And one of them is just simply showing up every day. That was really hard because again, I wasn't sure was that what I was experiencing. I thought it was from, the betrayal. And yes, that had something to do with it too, but not nearly to that degree. Or maybe, I honestly, I don't know. It could have been menopause. It could have been perimenopause. It could have been all these things. So choosing intentionally to show up every day made it even harder because there was unknown things that were plaguing me. It's just part of midlife. Isn't that crazy? Yes. So for me, it would, oh my gosh, there was this one experience when I was like doing this videos. You guys, if you only knew how hard it was for me to get on video and to feel natural and to sound natural. And everybody was always talking about being authentic, but I was so scared. TMI, like I would have such nerves that I would literally have diarrhea. I know, TMI, I'm so sorry, but that's how bad it was. And so I started playing little tricks of like, well, I won't eat before I get on. Didn't work, didn't matter. Like my nerves were so high that my gut would hurt. And it's always happened 10 minutes before. And then I decided to step into my power. And this is how it went down. I was so scared all the time, but I knew that this world of video wasn't going anywhere. And so I knew that I had to overcome it. But how do I overcome this thing? I don't know. I decided that I would do 30 straight days nonstop. Every single day in the month of May, I would do a video. It was terrible. It was horrible. I got sick so much. And so I did interviews. I didn't do a solo thing because I wasn't quite ready for the solo thing. And I would do interviews and sometimes people didn't show up and I would still do it because I knew that stepping into power isn't something you talk about. It's something that you do. It's a decision you have to make. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I did 30 straight days. Not that it ever like, oh, now I'm super professional. It took 2 years for me to do this, to get comfortable in front of a camera, to just talk to myself, because that's literally what I'm doing right now is talking to myself. And I just didn't, I am not a giver upper. I know that about me, but I also didn't think I was brave enough, but I just kept doing it. So I just remember reading a Brene Brown. No, actually, I didn't read a book. I watched her special on Netflix, and I can't remember what it's called. but she has a special on Netflix. I think it was like a dare, call to dare or something like that, or dare something where she's calling you out to. And I remember she said one of the things was to be bold and adventurous takes a lot of courage for us to take up space. And it really sunk because I thought, what does that look like for me? What does that look like for me? Have you thought about that? What does that look like for you? If somebody just asked you to actually dare you to take up space, what would that look like for you? I've heard that so many times. Oh, we need to take up space, right? Like Sheryl Sandberg's book is Lean In is all about taking up space. But what does that actually really mean for each of us individually to take up space? And for me, I am a very, I'm an extrovert. I have a big personality. I like I like to talk. I'm so curious about people. I ask a ton of questions when I first meet someone, and I pre-warn them like, hey, if this is offensive, if you don't like it, just tell me to be quiet, shut up, or stop asking me questions. And I would happily comply. But that's just naturally me. I just didn't know how to take that version of me that is in front of people and do it in front of no one because I'm just doing it on camera. So it takes time to take up that space. And so I would encourage you to take the time to choose into your life and choose yourself, choose a version of you that you've not quite met, and then choose to rise up. That is where I'm at. So, but here's the thing. It's not about perfection. Like that's another thing. I have a really, really good friend, one of my best friends actually, that is her like perfection. That's her nemesis is perfection. Ladies, I don't know where that'll ever actually happen. And if that's you, you've been talking about that for a really long time, like, oh my gosh, if it's not perfect, I just can't move forward. Or if it's so subconscious that perfection is there, like if you want my forgiveness coach's information, I would happily give it to you because we need to get over that. I don't know how, but let's. So that is my call to action to you, is that we can't keep talking about the fact that we're not lost, that this is our greatest chapter, this is our boldest chapter, and then actually not do shit about it. Like, I really think we have to do less of this and do more of this when it comes to calling ourselves into the thing we're meant for, and also that courage it takes to just step into it. I know. You're probably like, listen, if you are still watching me, first of all, I am so grateful because I hope that somebody who's listening is like, wow, I really like what she's saying. But at the same time, I also don't care because I chose to step into my power by giving my voice breath. Because my voice, my very unique voice called Wonderful, is not unlike any other voice. And it wants to breathe and speak. And so I'm letting it. So let's do this. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Let's stop asking for permission. First of all, who are we trying to get this permission from? Let's stop asking for permission and let's just take up space in our most honest version, whatever that is. Sometimes it's not perfect. Sometimes we're rambling. Sometimes we're like, wow, we just threw down some truth bombs, some knowledge bombs, some awesomeness. And sometimes it's just listening to ourselves breathe. But no matter what it is, we have to step into it. Because although midlife is the most amazing space, let's be completely honest, we're not getting younger. We're moving forward. We have less time to take up space on this earth than the younger generation. So if we don't take advantage of that, what are we doing? So let me ask you, are you with me? You with me? I hope you're with me because I don't want to do this alone. I would love to get some girlfriends in here and have this conversation. So if you're interested in doing like a panel conversation, let's do it. Let's have this conversation about all the things, right? That I just shared with you and share your stories because the truth is we're not lost, ladies. We are just evolving. We're evolving into who we're meant to be. And let's do this. So thank you so much for listening to me. Until next time, remember that our story, our time, this is it. And it's so important. It's so important. That is all I've got. I was thinking, oh, I should say something else. And I'm like, for why? I don't know. I just feel like I always should be making sense and following the algorithm of what's happening out there. But you know what? I don't give a shit. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. All right, sisters. Until next time. Bye.